You ready? Anything I need to know before we get started? Okay, let's go ahead and begin the full committee of Education Administration. 3:30. We've got a few bills, and this, if we get through it, this is maybe our last calendar, subject to the call of the chair. So we've done a yeoman's job this year getting through. Let's have the clerk call the roll.
Representative Baum, Carringer, Cassada, Sapicki, Clemens, Cochran, Darby, Gillespie, Hakeem, Haston, Lafferty, Love, Parkinson, Reagan, Vice Chairman Hart, Chairman White.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. As we get started, members, anyone have a recognition, comment, announcement to begin with? As we begin, I always do like to begin our committee with a prayer, because we are a committee that sits over trying to do the right thing that eventually affects our students and the children in our state. About 1 million young people going to school. So would you bow your heads? Most Holy Father, thank you for all that you bless us with. Thank you for the responsibility and the opportunity you've given each of us to sit on this committee to think about things that will improve the lives of the young people across this state as they grow up. Work with us, keep us strong, help us to listen to each other and do what we should be doing. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. And also, members, as we get started, for those, this is for the teachers out there and AV land and everywhere else that's listening. This is why your teacher, I used to teach school back in the 70s, 40 plus years ago. I taught 7th grade and then 5th and 6th. I got a text that went on for like 2 or 3 pages from a young lady that I taught in 6th grade in 1978. Haven't heard from her since, but I do remember her very well. And she sent me a text, and it went on and on, but I just wanted, this is why we teach. I can't remember a day that I ever saw you frown or made any student feel like they were wrong. Even if we knew we had done something wrong, you always use it as a learning opportunity for us to improve ourselves. And she goes on and on. And then at the end, she ended into, thank you for being my teacher. And that's sweet. And that was 42 years ago. And just out of the blue, I get this. And she still lives in the community in West Tennessee. But that kind of says it all. You know, where did that come from after 42 years? And so you never forget your students, and they never forget you. Okay, members, we're on item number 1, correct, which is HB 1131 by Farmer. You're recognized, sir. We got a motion and a second. Do you have amendment on that? Can I get my mark calendar? 1 second, sir.
Thank you.
Let me get my mark calendar. You have the big one?
Yeah, this is a
Okay. Okay, you have motion second on the bill. I see you've got several amendments. We working on one or several?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, committee members, if we could work 2, if we could work them in this order, I have an untimely filed amendment, drafting code 7026.
Got a motion second on untimely filed amendment. Would you like to describe?
Yeah, let me do that. I had misspoke in subcommittee. What this bill does is, a few years ago, we passed a law that says that the LEAs are required to have background checks on their vendors' employees. These are folks that come in that the LEAs hired to come in and do some work. And I had told the subcommittee that this had to do with the direct employees of the LEAs, but this actually has to do with the vendors of the LEAs. So this amendment speaks to the vendors of the LEAs and allows them the discretion to hire these folks if they've had a nonviolent crime, misdemeanor that does not involve children, has nothing to do with the child whatsoever. So the children are not in harm's way whatsoever. So these folks can continue to work for the LEAs as vendors. Because when we passed our law, some folks that had been working as vendors for the LEAs had been working for 10, 15, 20 years, and then may have had a misdemeanor, a nonviolent misdemeanor record, and they weren't able to work for the LEAs any longer. So this is what this does.
Hey, members, with that explanation on this, I have a motion and a second on this amendment to, okay, that,
Motion to adopt the amendment.
okay, we got a motion, second to adopt the amendment. Any objection? All those in favor of adding Amendment 7026 on to House Bill 1131, indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We're now back on, what is the next amendment that do we need to add another one?
Mr. Chair, and I believe that Representative Casta may have an amendment because in subcommittee, I had brought this bill forward and it said within 20 years, they can look, it had to be 20 years. And I think Representative
sir.
Casta may have something, does look something different there.
Representative Castor, you recognize?
I do, Chairman Farmer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I filed two amendments. I want to withdraw this one, and its tracking number is 006608. I want to withdraw that one.
Without
Mr. Chairman.
objection, 6608 is withdrawn.
And the Amendment 3 in our packets, 006609, that's the one I wish to, I move that we adopt, and it strikes 20 years and inserts 10 years.
Got a motion and second. Discussion on that amendment? Question's been called. Any objection? Hearing none. All those in favor of adding 6609 out to House Bill 1131, indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We're now back on the bill properly amended. Can we add those, roll into one? Okay, we'll roll those into one. Okay, we're now back on your bill as properly amended.
Right. And now, members, what this means is that if there's an employee of a vendor that's working in a school and it's been 10 years since their conviction of their nonviolent misdemeanor that has nothing to do with kids, they can continue to work there.
Thank you, and I appreciate you bringing this. Last year when this came up, I remember we had a bill and it was causing some employment problems with their LEAs, and I think this will go a long ways to fixing that.
Thank you.
Members, any further discussion on House Bill 1131? Question's been called. Objection? Hearing none. All those in favor of moving it to calendar rules indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Moves out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
House Bill 865 by Chairman Haston. Motion and a second. Chairman Haston, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has an amendment 7097.
Motion second on that amendment. It does rewrite the bill. Members, you want to go ahead and add it and then have discussion on the bill? Any objection to that? Hearing none. All those in favor of adding 7097 to House Bill 865 indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We're now back on your bill as amended. Chairman Haston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the past couple of years, we've all become familiar with the fact that percentage increases in the BEP instructional component does not guarantee pay raises going directly to our teachers. What this bill does is help ensure that these BEP instructional component increases reach the teachers that need it the most by having the state salary schedule match the BEP instructional component percentage increase. And I'll give you an example to illustrate this. If the General Assembly passes a 3% increase in the BEP instructional component, then the state minimum for teacher salaries would also increase by that same percentage, ensuring that the lowest paid teachers who are at the state minimum will see that 3% increase. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
That explanation, members. Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm so appreciative of your number two over there, man, because you don't see nothing up here in the front row. I'm just joking. Just give me a hard time. And I want to thank Chairman Haston for bringing this. Let me look at you. I want to thank you for bringing this bill. Part of this will definitely go a long way, or is a good step in the right direction. But also, we need to make sure that we are being truthful. When we say that we are giving teachers a raise, because we get up here and we say, hey, teachers are going to get a 4% raise, and we hoop and holler and jump up and down and clap and stand up. Some of you stand up, and then we only realize that it's only 4% for those teachers that are being paid through the BEP. And so that's really not the whole truth. And so it doesn't equal out to a 4% raise, because and then it puts it on the LEA to explain it to the teachers, hey, that yes, the governor said 4%, but you're not really getting 4%, because we have to spread it to all of the teachers, because the BEP does not pay us enough to employ all of the teachers that we need. And so there are some teachers that are employed outside of the BEP that this raise that we quote unquote patted ourselves on the back saying that we're giving to teachers, it doesn't cover those teachers. And so I want to thank you again for bringing this legislation, but I wish you would put in that inside of your bill also that we need to be honest when we're saying we're giving the teachers a raise, if we're actually giving them a raise or not. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chairman, for bringing the bill, and I want to sign on to it also.
Thank you very much, Representative Parson. Anyone else? Any further discussion on House Bill 865? Question been called. Objection? Hearing none. All those in favor of moving 865 out to Finance, indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Moves out to Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee.
Chairman Reagan, before you step up, do you mind, we've got is Representative Lamar in here, London? She's got a bill in criminal justice. Representative Lamar, you asked if you could go ahead and carry your bill. I want to recognize you. Go ahead and make your way to the podium. Item number 6, House Bill 1020. Got a motion and a second on House Bill 1020. Representative Lamar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. Can I also request a roll call vote of in advance? And this bill
Representative
was,
Lamar, can I ask you a question?
yes, sir.
Did this bill make it, I have notes that it did not make it through the Senate. Is that true?
It did not, but I'm asking us to vote on it today.
Well, may I ask you to reconsider any roll call vote if it's to put the members on record for a bill that's not moving? Representative Parkinson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and maybe somebody can help me, and I guess this is for clarification purposes, but we heard a bill on the floor today that was dead in the Senate also. And, you know, and so maybe I'm unclear on what the difference is.
Okay, I was asking as a favor. I just hate put members on a roll call vote when the bill is already died in the Senate. Point of order, recognize
Chairman.
Representative Pickey.
Not to belabor this point, but there is no companion bill to this bill anymore. It never received a second. Therefore, it is impossible for any action to be taken on this bill. There is no companion bill in the Senate. It did not receive a second. The issue that some people have talked about was that bill that Chairman Williams talked about went to general sub, which means it could be pulled from the clerk's desk. There is no clerk's desk to pull this from. Therefore, there is no action to be taken on this bill. There's nothing to act with. And
Representative Castle, you're recognized.
Sorry. House rules are clear that if the Senate companion bill is dead, by defined as how you defined it, Representative, then there can be no action taken on this bill on the House side.
So here's what we're gonna do at the decision of the chair. This bill is dead in the Senate. I'm going to allow the representative to present this, but I'm going to say that we're not going to take a vote on this if it's dead in the House. Not a roll call vote. If you want us to vote on the bill, I'll give you a voice vote. We're not going to put the members on record for a bill that's not moving forward. But you are recognized, Representative Lamar.
For clarification purposes, I think that was important to bring this bill back because there's much on this bill. Last week, there was a lot of misinformation that was said about this bill. There was implications that administrators were working against the bill who were not. So I thought it was important that we bring this back to present it in its original form where there was no one. And it was quoted that the Secretary of State was advocating against that. He was not, and he clarified it with many members on his committee. And it's an important issue. I have every right to present it and ask us to make a vote on it and request a roll call vote. If the committee takes different actions, you know, that is their choice. But this bill is simply to make a statement to eligible voters in our state that we would at least give them an email to say that you are eligible to vote. That's what it is. And if we don't want to make a statement on that, you are also making a statement as well.
Representative Clemens?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate and understand that the chair has wide discretion here, but I just, I'm curious, we're apparently ignoring one rule and interpreting another. The word dead in the House rules isn't specifically defined. The Senate could actually move to reconsider and bring that vote back up. So if we want to have a legal discussion about the definition of dead, that's something that's on the table. But I just want to say, whatever we're going to do, let's be consistent. And I appreciate the chair has wide discretion here. And, it's a bill. It's her bill. She has control of the bill. Let's just take a vote. Thank you. And also on the record, I want to apologize. I had interpreted statements in this committee to mean that the Secretary of State was opposing the bill actively. And I apologize to him for that because he stated that he did not do that, as the sponsor has said. So I want to get that on the record as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm conferring with the clerk's office to make sure that I'm not in error. If I am, then we will back up. But Representative Lamar, you may present your bill.
This is a piece of legislation that will require LEAs to send either an email, a sheet of paper, or something in the mail to eligible rising 18-year-olds of the upcoming election that they're eligible to vote. And the information that is given has to come from your local election commission or the Secretary of State office. That's it. No fiscal note, no outside organizations. It's literally just to send an email to 17-year-olds saying you're eligible to vote. I think this is important because if we truly say we believe that everyone has the right to vote, why not make them aware that they have the right to vote? This is a statement that we want our rising 18-year-olds who will be 18 at the time of the election for us as a state to let them know that we want you to participate. It is your constitutional right to vote, regardless of what your political party is. You have a right to vote for whoever and whatever you want. We just simply want you to know that you are eligible to vote. And then it's upon them to decide to go and register to vote themselves. That's it. It's not political. It's not, it seems it's been, people made it political and it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be educational. It's really simple. It doesn't cost anything to send somebody an email. So that's an explanation of the bill.
Thank you very much. Representative Parkinson, I see your hand up.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, thank you for bringing the bill. Chair Lady Lamar, thank you for bringing the bill. And thank you for continuing to talk about the bill, even, with pressure in this committee. This is regardless of what we do on this legislation. And I'm glad that she asked for a roll call vote. And I think it benefits all of you to do a roll call vote, because I believe that most of you up here on this dais believe in our democracy and our way of government. I believe that most of you up here on this dais believe that our children should get involved in the process. I believe that most of you up here on this dais also understand that people fought and died for people to have the right to live and operate in this form of government. I further believe that we want to build and create our next leaders from the next generation so that they can get involved and utilize their voice in our government. And so, if I would recommend, I hope rather that we will get on the record in stating that we believe in our democracy and our young people and want them involved in our form of government. And this is a great place to start. This is them at the beginning, the very beginning of the process for getting involved in government. And so thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair Lady Lamar, for bringing the bill. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Representative, and I can agree with everything you say. Representative Lamar, one thing I'm concerned about, what is the role of the school? That's my concern. What is the role of the school in this, and how far will the school be involved?
So the bill simply says that all the 17-year-olds who will be 18 at the time of the upcoming election will either simply send those students an email, a physical letter, which is like a sheet of paper in homeroom, or if they want to, put in the mail saying you are eligible to vote. If you want to go register to vote, go see the Secretary of State's office or your local election commission. That's it.
Chairman Lafferty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any reason in your mind that we can't trust our young people coming out of high school to know that they have the right to vote, given we have cell phones, 24-hour news channels, everything else? Is there something they're lacking that they're not quite capable of knowing that they can vote?
I want to be acknowledged before I respond.
You're recognized, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to make sure he recognized me before I respond. Yes, even though we have social media, not all 17-year-olds in the state of Tennessee have social media. As you can see, this past year, we're putting millions of dollars of expanding broadband across the state of Tennessee because this bill will apply to all 17-year-olds across the state of Tennessee. All of them don't have internet access, and we're not teaching it in the school curriculum as we should. This is a way, when you go to school, we are teaching you to be good stewards of the community, to how to engage in society in a meaningful way. And that includes exercising your right to vote. So I truly believe our local education systems have an obligation to ensure that we are educating our students so they can fully participate in society. Because we do have social media, but not every child in Tennessee who's 17 has access to the internet or social media. Some may not even have cell phones or computers because they may not be able to afford it, or again, they may not have internet access. So yes, there are situations where they would not know this information. What this does is he creates equality across the board so that every rising 18-year-old has the ability to know that they are eligible to vote and where to go to do it.
So in 13 years of education, where we are teaching our children to be better citizens, civics, they don't pick up that they have the right to vote when they're 18. They're not capable of absorbing that in 13 years of education.
Representative Lamar?
Thank you. Yes, I don't think that all of them do know. If that was the case, Tennessee is at the bottom of the nation when it comes to voter turnout. Even some of our adults are not educated and aware of how they can exercise their right to vote and if they should. So we can't promise that. We've seen, no, it's not. Those conversations are not necessarily going on in the household, or they're not happening in the churches or the communities. This ensures that we are making them aware that they are eligible to vote, because no, in the 13 years, if that was the case, we would be at the top of the nation when it comes to voter turnout. But as we can see, if we look at the numbers between 18 and 24, those are lowest voter turnout rates. They are not educated on the process, which is why I'm doing this. As being the youngest woman in the legislature, I'm using my role to further educate and provide opportunities for young people to be involved in the political process, because it's so very important. I remember the pride I had when I voted for the first time at 18 years old. I was so excited because yes, my family did take it upon themselves and they were active voters. But unfortunately, my friends did not know there was an election come up. They did not know how to vote. That's maybe their parents didn't even vote. They had no information about it. What this simply does is, in the simplest form, at no cost to anybody, it is to educate and make them aware that they are eligible to vote. And if they decide to take their opportunity to vote, they can with their local election commission or the Secretary of State's office. And therefore, we don't keep it political. It's statewide application. It's not favoring one person or another, and it literally costs nothing. We make everybody aware of a lot of other things when they become of age, but why not the right to vote? It's a constitutional obligation that we all should respect. Think about all the people who went to the polls to vote for us. And we defend the right to be here and we defend the fact that these individuals who elected us here are able to exercise their right to vote. So let's ensure we defend the opportunity for all Tennesseans to exercise the right to vote by making them aware. And that includes our rising 18-year-olds. And our LEAs are the ones that are closest to these individuals and have the capacity to touch them at one time and make them aware with information that is provided from the state of Tennessee, such as our Secretary of State's office or the local election commissions in their county. And I will say that some election commissioners, like in Shelby County, are doing a fabulous job at making sure that rising 18-year-olds are eligible to vote. I join in and going to the high schools in Shelby County and registering students myself with our local election commission. But the fact is, not every county is doing that. Not every county is being forthright like Shelby County and Davidson County and other places. We want to ensure that all 17-year-olds at least get a sheet of paper or email, or if they decide to put it in the mail, just to say, go to the Secretary of State's website and register. Go to your local election commission website if you want to register to vote. That's it. It's that simple. It's not even that complicated. And it costs nothing.
Thank you. Representative Lafferty, you have a follow-up?
Please.
You recognize.
Not sure if you're familiar with or if the committee's familiar with the erasure parties, erasure parties that took place in Atlanta several years ago. Group of teachers and I believe some of the administrators, I'd have to go back and read the story, got together and began to alter test scores so that they could improve their performance outcomes. They got caught, some of them got arrested, some of them went to jail. I say that to mention that there is a possibility that people could take advantage of this and selectively choose who it is that they mail to at voting time. They could selectively choose which students get and don't get some kind of notification of this right to vote. And I think you would agree with me, you wouldn't want a teacher picking out students that were about to go and be maybe pushed, coerced, or even coached up in the months leading up to an election to go and vote for somebody like Donald Trump. Would you agree?
You recognize.
Thank you. We don't want to make anybody manipulate the system. That's why this bill puts in place the fact that you have to notify all rising 18-year-olds. Now, teachers are found to be that they are not supposed to put their political affiliations on students. And just like those individuals were caught and dealt with, they will be caught and dealt with just like this bill. So this bill is putting in place that you have to notify everyone. And if you don't, if we were to, if this bill were law, they will be breaking the law and you will be dealt with based on the criminal system we put in place. So of course we don't want that to happen. I agree, but this bill ensures that that won't happen. It ensures that we are supposed to notify all rising 18-year-olds.
Last one.
Last follow-up.
Last one.
Last follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sponsor. Our schools, as you've stated, already instruct and teach our kids about civics and their rights to vote. They've also made it a point to try and get that information. Hey, you're turning 18. It's your time to come up and vote. I don't see a need to codify something like this, but thank you for your passion and I appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee, for your indulgence.
Thank you. Next on my list is Representative Cassidy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And in light that the schools across Tennessee already do this, we're simply codifying what's already done. In light that it's already done, in light that according to House rules, if a Senate bill companion is not moving, then neither should this. My motion is to roll this till February 23rd of 2022. That'll give us time to see if the Senate companion bill moves. So that's my motion.
We have a motion and a second before us. Come back to Representative Lamar. You have the last word before we vote on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. No, every school district is not doing that. If that was the case, we wouldn't be pushing this bill. So I do want to say that. But you have the opportunity to make a statement today. And if you do roll it, you're still making a statement that you don't believe all 17-year-olds should get an email saying they're eligible to vote. You have an opportunity to change the messaging today. You have an opportunity to send out a message to rising 18-year-olds about encouraging them to exercise a constitutional right. Again, I ask that you don't roll this bill. I ask that we take up this vote and do it today and send a message. And then next year, the Senate can pick it back up and reconsider it. So we can take care of business today, right now, and do what the right thing that we're supposed to do. And the Senate can do what they're supposed to do next year. Same thing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We do have a motion before us. I was informed by the clerk's office, the rules are that if a member does request a roll call, a roll call vote before committee, then I have to recognize that. I do not have the authority to override that. I was asking really as a favor since the move. So, Madam Clerk, would you call it? We have a motion before us. Representative Sapicki?
I've got a point of order on the roll call vote. This is not a new bill. We've already made a motion and second on this bill to already hear it. We've already taken action on this bill in the last meeting. This is not new action. This is not a clean bill that's just come to us. This is a bill that we heard, we debated, and the sponsor rolled, which means she's already used up her ability to ask for a roll call vote because it's already been heard and voted on. She got a motion in a second.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, let's go to Representative Cochran.
So just to follow up on that point of order question. So not only was there a motion and a second, but we voted. I mean, and so I believe I believe we voted on it last week, and then we reconsidered our actions. And so the request for a roll call vote has to be made before the first vote is taken on the bill.
What we're going to do, I'm going to take a 5-minute recess, get with the clerk's office to get this clear. I'll be fair to all parties. So without objection, 5-minute recess. Okay, thank you, members, for that brief recess. We're now back in session. Let's get the committee started. Get first, Representative Parkinson. Not yet. Now we are. Members, let me give clarity on where we are on this. Right now, we have a motion before us by Representative Cassada that called for deferring House Bill 865 to February of calendar year 2022. Now, according to the rules, and trying to be fair to all our parties, and according to the rules, the sponsor cannot request a roll call vote because last week we added the amendment to the bill, so a vote has already been taken. So the sponsor cannot request a roll call vote. However, members of the committee can. And if at least 3 members request a roll call vote, then we will have to have the roll call vote. Do I have 3 objections to that? Okay. One more point of order. That is what we're going to vote on. The motion before us by Representative Cassada is to defer this bill to calendar year 2022, the month of February. Madam Clerk, if you want to defer it, you vote yes. If you don't, you vote no. Madam Clerk, Representative, I'll go back to the sponsor one more time. You have one last thing to say. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your clarity, and I appreciate the committee's indulgent on this issue, because if anything, it's a learning lesson of us getting more clarity on this process. It's obviously something new, and we never, hopefully so far, been in this situation. But I'm asking Representative Cassada to reconsider moving this and just take the vote today. Again, if you don't like this bill, vote no, and there's no hard feelings. And if you like the bill, vote yes and support it. But I think to just try to bring me back again to say the same thing and for me to beat down the same issue and time again, let's go. If you don't like it, kill it today. And if you support it, vote for it. So I'm asking Representative Cassada if he will be so graciously to reconsider the motion and allow the committee to either vote it up or vote it down today.
Representative Cassada, your name was mentioned. If not, I'll go to the clerk for the roll call.
No, I stand by my motion.
Okay. Members, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Representative Baum? No. Carringer? Cassada?
Yes.
Sapicki? Yes. Clemens?
No.
Cochran? Yes. Darby? Yes. Gillespie? No. Hakeem? No. Haston? Yes. Lafferty? Yes. Love?
No.
Parkinson? No. Reagan? Aye. Vice Chairman Hurt?
Yes.
Chairman White?
Yes.
10 ayes, 6 noes.
Okay. Motion carries. Bill is deferred to February of 2022. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for that parliamentary lesson for today. Okay, members, we're now on House Bill 580 by Chairman Reagan. Chairman Reagan, you're recognized at the well. Got a motion and a second on your bill. Any amendments?
Yes, sir. We have, to begin with, the bill was a caption bill. This amendment 5670 was making the bill. I don't think we have that on there yet, do we?
Got a motion second on amendment 5670. Does it rewrite the bill, sir?
It does.
Okay, members, we're on amendment 5670. Any objection to adding the amendment to the bill since it rewrites the bill? Hearing no objections, all those in favor of adding the amendment 5670 to House Bill 580 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We're now back on your bill as properly amended.
I have another amendment, sir. Drafting code 7034.
Got a motion second on 7034. It was timely filed. Would you like to explain the amendment, sir?
Basically, this amendment, which was only 5 lines, says notwithstanding any other law, a public school teacher is not required to take an assessment to reactivate a license from this state that has expired if at the time of application to reactivate the license, the public school teacher possesses an active professional license in a state that has a reciprocal agreement with the State Board of Education pursuant to TCA Code 49-5-109.
That explanation, members. Discussion on the amendment 7034. We got a motion to add to the bill. Any objection to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adding 7034 to House Bill 580 indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We're now back on your bill is fully amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill has, prior to that last amendment, 48 items in it. It was essentially a cleanup bill that was originally introduced by Chairman Dunn last session. And what it does is it goes through the code and makes a lot of changes. Those changes were related to what this body did in 2018, wherein we required that agencies promulgate rules instead of policies for certain conditions. So going through the code, we came up with 44 issues that needed to be changed to correct those items from policies to rules. In addition, I will mention that the Department of Education came up with 4 additional cleanup items that they wanted to add to this. And I'm perfectly happy to go through all 48 of this if you want me to. But the sum total of these things is they basically clean the language up to ensure that we are in compliance with other portions of the TCA. And if anybody wants to know specifics, I'm more than happy to give them to you. I have them all listed right here.
Yeah, you don't need to do it on my behalf. Any other members? I've got a question on the bill called. Any objection? Legal, can we roll those 2 amendments into one? Okay, thank you. That is request and done. Okay, the motion to, the question's been called on the bill. All those in favor of moving 580 out to GovOps indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, sir. This brings us down to item number 4, House Bill 1210 by Chairman Reagan. We got a motion. Do we have a second? Got a motion and a second. Any amendments to consider?
Yes, sir.
Which one are you working on?
7101.
Motion in a sec. Do we have a second? Okay, this rewrites the bill.
Yes, sir.
It's the only amendment you have that you're adding to this?
Let me double check. I think that's correct, sir.
I believe that's correct.
I've got a lot of paper here, but I think that's the only one I'm showing.
Okay, members, this does rewrite the bill. Any objection to adding it to the bill for discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adding the amendment 7101 to House Bill 1210 indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Your bill is properly amended. You may now describe your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill amends the Professional Educator Collaborating Conferencing Act that this body passed in 2011. Additionally, it takes into account a Supreme Court decision that applies in this case. The bill maintains that the Professional Educators Act, which I'm going to call PECA for short, if you don't object, which PECA specified that during negotiations and collaborative bargaining over salaries and so forth, no dollars could go for political purposes. That issue was addressed by the Supreme Court in the case known as Janus and versus an acronym, which I won't go into, but it was an employees association. Let me tell you briefly what this bill does not do before we get into what it does. It does not prohibit LEAs from implementing any employee payroll deductions for any purpose under their own policy. It simply affirms that deductions for political activity shall not be part of PECA negotiations. This bill does not discriminate against any professional employees organization. All professional employees organizations are treated equally and held to the same standard under this bill, regardless of the size or influence that they may have. In sum, the Collaborative Conferencing Bill, or PECA, is triggered when professional employees organizations want to negotiate with school districts to withhold member dues via payroll deduction. And this goes back to the Janus decision, which we can discuss in a minute. But the act specifically prohibited and continues to prohibit districts from negotiating over withholding any dues or funds that would be used for any political activity. And specifically, if you want the reference that PECA is in its Tennessee Code 49-5-608, subparagraph B. And it says, and I quote, "No collaborative conferencing shall be conducted on payroll negotiations for political activity." Now, I can go into a great deal more on this that the bill has in it, as well as in requiring these organizations to inform their members what the total cost is on an itemized basis, allowing them to opt out or in on an annual basis at any time that they choose. However, I'm certain that many of you would want to hear from experts in this field, and therefore, Mr. Chairman, at your pleasure, the committee's pleasure, we have expert witnesses to be heard from.
Thank you, Chairman Reagan. I have on the list Mr. Vincent Bernuccio. Is that correct? Sir, come up to the podium, make sure the red light's on. And we are out of session. Sir, at the one of the tables would be fine. Thank you. There's a little button, make sure the red light is on. And we are recorded live, so state your name and your title for those listening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify here today. My name is Vincent Verduccio, and I'm a senior fellow at the Mackinac Center for Public Policy's Workers for Opportunity Project. Here in support of HB 1210 is basically a cleanup bill. In 2011, as the chairman has said, Tennessee passed the Collaborative Conferencing Act, or PECA, which was a compromise bill. And part of the compromise was that payroll deductions for political activities would no longer be taken out of educators' paychecks. Now, along comes the Supreme Court in 2018, and they said that everything that government unions do is inherently political. Any type of collaborative conferencing, or as they call it, collective bargaining, was inherently political activities. In fact, citing another Supreme Court case, they said in the public sector, core issues such as wages, pensions, and benefits or important political issues regarding what unions or professional associations would be negotiating over. That put the Supreme Court decision at odds with PECA, because you have the Supreme Court saying you can't deduct everything that these professional associations do is political if they're doing collaborative conferencing, and you have PECA saying, well, you can't deduct political issues, political money from educators' paychecks. Therefore, this bill simply cleans that up and says, okay, if there's collaborative conferencing, that is now political, no more deductions from educators' paychecks. And then, as the sponsor said, it goes further. It simply informs educators about their rights, that they have now a First Amendment right to choose to pay dues or not, that they're given a fresh opportunity if the professional association is collaborative conferencing, that they have a fresh opportunity yearly for their members to make a decision. You know, we heard in the Senate committee that there's one teacher that likely supports the professional association, but hasn't been given a fresh choice in 40 years. 40 years. I can't tell you what that's like because I'm not 40 years old yet. So my entire life, that teacher has never been given a fresh opportunity to choose what's coming out of her paycheck or how much money she is paying to an organization. Gives them the right to exercise this ability at any time, eliminating any type of windows scenario where a teacher could be trapped into paying dues until a certain time of year. It brings transparency with the disclaimer of you have a right to choose to pay or not pay. This is how much you will be paying, not just for the local organization, but for the state and the national. And finally, it ensures good bookkeeping and transparency making sure that there is a paper trail for those that do wish to pay and those that do wish to join. So with that, I am happy to take any questions. And once again, we very heartily support HB 1210. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bernicio. While we have him before us, any members have a question of our guest? Representative Lafferty?
Try and be quick this time. Thank you, Chairman. Is it your opinion that we are in violation somehow of federal law?
Definitely believe there is a conflict between PECA and between what the Supreme Court said. Yes, the Supreme Court said that with collaborative conferencing, with collective bargaining, everything that is done is political. And you have something very clear within PECA. In fact, it's 49-5608B6, which says there can be no payroll deductions for political issues. So yes, there is a conflict there, and that's where the cleanup bill is. That's where the cleanup portion of this bill is coming from.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Chairman Haston?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any other associations that, professional associations that would fit this criteria of being counter to what Janice states, or is just the teaching profession the only one that has that designation?
Right now, I mean, we are talking about the Collaborative Conferencing Act. I am not aware of any other portion of Tennessee law. I'm not an expert on Tennessee law that does have that prohibition on political funding taken out of a employee's paycheck. So I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for you, but it is very clear within the Collaborative Conferencing Act that taking money from someone's paycheck for political purposes is illegal.
Chairman Haston? Representative Parkinson? Representative Cochran?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so you're familiar with this bill? I mean, you're familiar with the language of the bill before us?
You're recognized, sir.
Yes, I am.
Okay. So is it your opinion that this bill only affects those counties that are participating in collective conferencing? So let me provide a little bit more clarity. So not all counties in Tennessee have collective conferencing with collaborative, is that it? Thank you. So collaborative conferencing with TEA or other professional organizations. My counties, the ones that I represent, they do take out the TEA dues or whatever professional association out of the paycheck, but it's something that the teacher signed up for maybe years ago. And so unless the teacher tells our finance office to stop that withdrawal, that withdrawal continues. So does this bill affect my county, or does it only affect those counties that are a part of the collaborative conferencing?
I believe it would be effective to the collaborative conferencing. The bill is specific, the language in the bill, that in order for a school district or a county to engage in collaborative conferencing, that the professional association would give teachers that opportunity to re-up every year, that they would inform them of their rights, that they would give them the information on how much dues are.
Just one quick follow-up.
You follow up?
Thank you, and I'll be quick on this one. So the way that McMinn County is doing it currently, it's in your opinion, the way that this bill is written, that McMinn County would not have to, or TA, whoever, would not have to notify McMinn County teachers every year, hey, to provide them the same notification, because we're not a collaborative conferencing county. Is that, I just want to make sure that I'm interpreting that correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with the exact aspects, but yes, the way the bill is written is that in order to have the privilege of collaborative conferencing with a professional association, the bill requires the professional association to have that transparency, to give that notice and give those opportunity to teachers.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion of Mr. Bernicio? Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
You are. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good, thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, thank you so very, very much.
Thank you.
Oh, do have a few more people that request to speak while we're out of session. I would like to invite to the podium Mr. Jim Rye, Mr. Rick Colbert. And then at the other table, if I could have Mr. J.C. Bowman and Audrey Shores be on deck for the next. Since there's 4 of you, I'm going to limit each of you to 3 minutes. And then I will cut you off and go to the next person.
Great.
Okay, we will start with Mr. Jim Rye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Rye, Tennessee Education Association. So Tennessee, TEA is a 156-year-old professional association. We are a professional association as designated by our bylaws, Constitution, and by our IRS. Couple of things that I heard just now. So to be couple clear, right? TEA membership is voluntary. We are a right-to-work state. Nobody has to join. And to be clear, any member may drop membership at any time. TA members set the terms of our membership at our representative assembly. This is something that's self-governance. And what our membership has decided is that membership is ongoing. I was proud of the fact that we have a member that's been a member for 41 years. Never has she thought, oh, I need to, I have been somehow snookered. No, she has been a proud member and has never had to sign up again. That's the crux of this bill, is that what is not mentioned is that it would require every member, every teacher to sign up every year. And I'll let Mr. Colbert go through, but that it is not just only collaborative conferencing, it is every teacher statewide. Now, our point is this, is that if Janus, has been mentioned before, does apply to a lot of things in our state, that would mean every professional association, state employees, TWRA officers, firefighters, FOP, they too would fall under this. Somehow we are now out of compliance with the Supreme Court ruling, which was Janus versus AFSCME. But the fact is we're a right to work state. This case does not apply. So what this does is it singles out teachers as members of their professional association and says for the first time, no, you must sign up every year. That's the crux of this bill. Something that our association has decided not to. Other associations may decide they want to, but that is not the state to decide. You are going to re-up every year. That is why it's singling out teachers and why it is not fair. So I go through and I hear a lot of things about conferencing, and I realize most folks don't know what it is. But we are very proud of the fact that we have made it work, as the General Assembly gave us this powerful tool to work with our school boards to come up with an MOU. That we believe that this is clearly not fair because it singles out, unlike any other public employee organization in our state, of which there are many, it says only teachers will have to re-up every year. Nowhere else in state code does it tell a professional employee you must sign up every year, and that is the crux of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rye. Mr. Rick Colbert?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Rick Colbert. I'm a lawyer here in Nashville. I've practiced law for 40 years here. I'm admitted to practice and have appeared before the state and federal courts throughout our state. And I have appeared in federal courts, in the federal appellate courts, and in the United States Supreme Court. I'm very familiar with the Janus case in my work for TEA, and frankly, it has absolutely nothing to do with this bill. Janus was a First Amendment case. It came out of the state of Illinois because Illinois had a state law that implemented an agency fee where non-members of the AFSCME union had to pay a fee to the union even though they were non-members. They had to do it by virtue of a state law. You don't have a First Amendment issue unless you have government action, either by the federal government or the state government, a state law. I can restrict the speech of my secretary. I can restrict anybody's speech in my house. That's not a First Amendment violation. There has to be government action for there to be a First Amendment violation. And the government action was the Illinois state law that compelled non-members to pay an agency fee to the union. We've never had a state law like that in Tennessee. We've never required non-members to pay anything to a professional employees organization. The only people who pay are members, and they pay by virtue of their purely voluntary membership agreement with the organization. What this bill does in Section 4 has nothing to do with collaborative conferencing. It has to do with regulating the membership process in professional employees organizations. And by trying to regulate the process by which teachers come together and join in an association, this body would not be correcting a constitutional problem, it would be creating a constitutional problem. Because teachers, like everybody else, enjoy a constitutional freedom of expressive association, which is protected by both the First and the 14th Amendment. And when the state tries to regulate their association, it invades that constitutional freedom. If you look at the Supreme Court decision in Roberts versus United States J.C.'s, they talked about, this was in 1984, they talked about the freedom of expressive association guaranteed by the First and 14th Amendment. And they said, government actions that may unconstitutionally infringe upon this freedom can take a number of forms. Among other things, government may seek to impose penalties or withhold benefits from individuals because of their membership in a disfavored group. It may attempt to require disclosure of the fact of membership in a group seeking anonymity, and it may try to interfere with the internal organization or affairs of the group. This bill does exactly that. It tries to regulate the manner in which members of a voluntary association will join and maintain their membership, and it would be unconstitutional. if
Thank you,
passed.
Mr. Colbert. Thank you. Ms. Audrey Shores, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. Audrey Shores, the COO of Professional Educators of Tennessee. We've been asked our position on the bill since it would affect us as a professional employees association. Our position is neutral because it doesn't create a huge burden to us as we see it with our members. We actually have members on payroll deduction in multiple counties that this is the process. They do have to enroll every year and send that authorization into to their district. And that would be easily replicated in other districts. It's not particularly difficult on our end to do that or to implement that. And I believe that most of the districts that we have payroll deduction set up with are not as a result of collaborative conferencing. So if it is only applied to collaborative conferencing, that it wouldn't have a huge impact there either.
Thank you. Mr. Bowen, you have anything to add? Okay, Ms. Shores is good enough. Okay, members, any discussion to the, those are guests in front of us? Representative Cochran?
And just a quick question to the representative of PET. Since y'all have been neutral on the bill, do you know, I mean, in your opinion, just as your interpretation of this bill, do you think it does just apply to the collaborative conferencing counties, or does it, I mean, when your organization has analyzed it, do you think it applies to everyone?
My understanding was that because this section is under the Collaborative Conferencing Act, that it would only apply to collaborative conferencing. That's my understanding of it. Regardless, our position remains the same.
And then
Follow up.
just if I may, I'll direct the same question to TEA.
Sure. So that as we've read, and again, I'm proud to say that TEA, as being experts in this field, and especially with collaborative conferencing, that we looked at, no matter where it was placed in the code, that this affects every teacher across the state. That is, and we are very serious about that this would require, for the first time, a professional group, public employees of any group to then have to re-sign up every year. And it is just simply that it was placed into the collaborative conferencing area. It is going to affect every teacher statewide.
Any further questions? We now go to Representative Sapicki.
So for both groups here, if this bill passes, and you want to maintain your collection ability of your dues for your teachers, will you have the ability to do that?
You're recognized. Who's that directed to?
Both of them?
Okay, Mr. Wright, you want to go first or Ms. Shores?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. We could still collect them if it passed. I mean, we could do the annual notification and they could still sign up that way. Like I said, we do that in other districts already. And then we also are able to collect dues with monthly basis by credit card or ACH collection, like you would a lot of other bills you probably have set up a bill pay through your bank or however you wanted to do it. So I would say the majority of our members are actually that do a recurring payment as a way of paying their dues, do so by electronic means directly with us, not through their LEA.
So it's,
Mr. Rye?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good question. And as we went back through the bill, we understand that this would apply to all teachers, regardless if they're doing bank draft or they're doing payroll deduction or any other aspect, that if you're going to be a member of a professional association, you're going to need to re-sign up. Not only that, but then the state will tell every organization what needs to be on your form. Not only that, but then it will also say that we need to make sure that in the sign up that those signups will be at the inspection of not only every school system, but for the commissioner of education. And so we look at this as all of these hurdles and other things that are placed in this bill. The purpose of the bill is to make maintaining membership as burdensome as possible. That is, and not only burdensome for teachers, unlike any other professional association, I reiterate, the firefighters, state employees, state troopers, and so on. But that also, with all of this paperwork, it becomes burdensome on our local associations, and it becomes burdensome on the school systems.
Representative Spicky, follow up.
So I appreciate that answer, but that wasn't the answer to my question. My question was, if this bill passes, will you have an alternative way to collect your dues? Will you do ACH deductions? Will you? I'm assuming your TA is not going to go away, right? So will you have an alternative way to collect the dues?
Mr. Rye.
So again, as we went through this bill and understood it in its plain language, it doesn't matter because we do have many members that pay with bank draft. The teacher I was talking about that had been 40 years, and I will reiterate, not trapped, proud member, always knew they could drop at any time. But that teacher pays with a check for the full dues because that's the way she likes to do it. As we went through this statute, it is saying even her, to be a member of her professional association, will need to sign up every year. And if she does not sign up or somehow does not get this form, unlike any other professional association, she is not a member anymore. And so, yes, this does impact so much about how teachers are members of their association, just like any other public employee organization.
You follow up?
So I'm assuming the answer was yes. You will have an alternative way to collect the dues.
I have to say, if these teachers who have not had to do this before, right, do not somehow, because again, in this owner's burden that is new upon them, that the state is going to impose, if they don't fill out these forms every year, and then the confirmation happens and so on, they will not be members, and we will not collect dues because they will not be members. They're going to have to sign up every year.
You have a follow-up?
We'll try again. So maybe let me ask in a different way. I belong to many things. And every year, that group sends me a letter in the mail and says, do you want to still be part of this? Kiwanis, Cattlemen's Associations, things like that. I take it, I write the check, and I send it in, and I'm done. I would assume, because of your organization, if you have to, and you keep saying onerous, everything that I've ever belonged to, it's either an email that I send in my credit card, or it's a letter in the mail that I fill out and send back in for my dues. it seems that it's not really onerous by just the TEA just sending their members a letter or sending them an email saying, hey, your dues are due next month. How would you like to pay for it? I'm trying to, I mean, you keep saying onerous, but the onerous would mean everything that we do in life, signing up for things, would be onerous. And I'm trying to hear your argument. I didn't hear you answer my question about you would come up with an alternative form if this bill passed. You keep saying it's an onerous burden. Why can't you just, if this bill applies, and I know we've had an attorney here, and we had another attorney before him, and chances are we could get 50 attorneys walk in here and they'll give us 50 different interpretations. Can you tell me, and if I'm trying not to be funny, I'm trying to be serious. So can you tell me, A, can TEA create an alternative plan if this bill passes? And number two, I'm trying to find why is it so onerous just to send something in the mail to somebody or an email? I'm listening.
Mr. Rye.
Thank you, Chairman Sapecki. So just to be clear, I have heard this analogy before. So I'm a member of Kiwanis and they have annual reauthorization. I'm a member of such and such. Also with PET, they do annual reauthorization. Those are decisions that are made by those groups, those associations, right? Those are freedom of association. We belong to things as we belong to them, and they set the rules of membership. So there are other things that, of course, we do that do not require annual reauthorization every year. And my members for decades have decided that, no, actually, membership would be ongoing. So just to really put that aside, because I've heard that a number of times, and this bill puts now and says that you, the Tennessee Education Association, your members are wrong, right? That your constitution and bylaws are wrong, and that we're not telling any other public employee organization or professional association, you have to do these things. Your internals are, we will not force you or demand that you do this in state law, but it will for us and for every member. Now, having said that, I do believe that when you have an organization that has functioned in this way for years, and our constitution and bylaws are set as such, that that now that it's imposed and you have to go through this now every year, is a burden. And being a member of your professional association is really important to our members. Again, it's voluntary, right? That you're a member, that you gain things for it, that it's part of being a professional educator, and that all of aspects of it that they maintain in our members, because it provides what they expect for their professional association. And this bill, and I keep going back because when I first heard it, never really mentioned that, hey, every year you're going to have to reauthorize. So that is our perspective. And if this bill passes, then we are going to make teachers have to jump through. And just as one other side too, and I appreciate your questions, Mr. Chairman. But I mean, we look at, and again, we are engaged with, we have members in all 141 districts and the state special schools. And some of our locals, run into the thousands. And that when you start to look at the concern that members would have, somehow their membership would be dropped. I mean, again, you can drop your membership at any time, but there are members that are constantly concerned that they will be dropped. And that is the concern that we have. If the bill passes, and will we have to then structure differently? Yes. And that again treats us differently than any other public employee organization in our state.
Last question, I promise.
Yeah.
Last question, I promise.
Follow up, Representative
So-
Sapecki.
And I'm trying to get there with you, but I'm having trouble. Every year, if everybody has health insurance, I get an email that I've got to either opt in, opt out, make my changes every year. It's not onerous. It takes me literally 15, 20 minutes because that's important to me. Health insurance from my employer is very important to me and my family. So when that email comes, I make sure I fill it out. I believe that your association probably provides a very good service to the teachers. If this bill passes, now if this bill doesn't pass, nothing changes, but if this bill passes, I'm sure your teachers will just be looking for your email or mailer or however you're going to do it and make sure that they're registered to continue on. So there's really no question there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to Chairman Hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Shores, this question's for you. You mentioned that, and this may be a question that's a little tough to answer, but you mentioned that you do have some districts that have to opt in every year as compared to districts that don't. You have plenty that don't also. With regards to the sizes of the districts, if this is possible, do you see a big discrepancy in the membership numbers between the ones that have the more burdensome annual compared to the ones that are automatically opt-in, being that the burdensome part is a major discussion is what we're hearing here?
Actually, for us, the districts where we have the most members using payroll deductions are the ones that have the annual requirement. And that's not something that we chose to do. That's why it's different depending on the district. It's whatever the LEA has decided is their requirement. So whatever the LEA tells us, this is how we do our payroll deductions. We want this form filled out every year, or we want this on the form, or whatever their process may be, that's what we follow.
Follow up, please.
Thank you. And in saying that, do you see a big discrepancy in your membership between the districts that do and don't?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman Haston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that we've gotten a little bit off point of what the baseline that we need to be looking at here is. It's, to me, both of these associations are doing a good job of what their association membership is used to. That's the baseline I think we need to work off of. We have teachers that are used to doing this, a certain way, and I correct me if I'm going to be wrong on this, but Mr. Bowman or Ms. Shores, your membership is used to doing it annually. If we ran a bill up here that said that all of a sudden your membership would have to do it monthly, you probably would work against the bill saying that. Not because that would be, maybe a bad idea, but something that maybe that not everybody is used to doing. And if my employer came to me and said, we're going to change this, I think that it's something that you just need to say. The baseline doesn't need to be if something can be done. It's like, should it be done off of what membership is currently used to? That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Chairman Caster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at something that really convinces me this is why we need the bill. And if I could read this from Putnam County, and I would like your all's response on it, Jim, if I could. But the policy of the Putnam County School Board as it relates to TA, here's what it reads. An employee may change or terminate any salary deduction upon the written notification to the board, except salary deductions required by contract between the employee and PECA. So in other words, it sounds like to me by their own writing, they can't get out of this. And so this is why we need this legislation, because if a teacher wants to get out and you teach in, for example, in Putnam County, and I'm sure in other counties as well, you can't. Did you know this was going on in this one county?
Mr. Rye or Mr. Colbert?
And also, I know that Pat also is involved with collaborative conferencing in Putnam. So if you'd like to address that issue, do you know in the MOU?
Mr. Bowman?
Yes, I was aware of that. That is a fact that in Putnam County, that is in their, it's been in there since about 1983. They've never taken it out of their board handbook. So it's board policy for the system. So I don't know why, he says that they can get out. He sent a letter, I think in 2019 that they could get out. That should be taken out of the board policy.
What, Mr. Chairman?
You recognize?
Obviously, it's a policy, and obviously it's in place, and I know that's in place in other counties in the state as well. So this is, ladies and gentlemen, this is why we need this bill.
Mr. Chairman,
You're recognized.
Right. So that in the MOU in Putnam County is not talking about payroll dues deduction guaranteed for only for professional association dues. That the slot is available for those dues, but they're not locked in, and that slot is eliminated. Please, to be clear on this, that anybody can drop in Putnam County at any time. That on the MOU and what they is placed in there is that there will be a slot available for professional associations that are recognized.
Mr. Chairman?
You're recognized.
Let me just follow up. I mean, that may be the intent, but if you read what's in black and white, which is binding, it's opposite of what you're saying.
One last follow-up.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, to be clear, there is nothing in that MOU that would require a teacher to maintain their membership in their professional association. Nothing.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up one time, I just read it and
You're recognized.
and Mr. Chairman, I just read it and what I'm hearing is one thing and what I'm reading is another. So we have a clear conflict, which is a reason to have the bill in code to make it very clear that what the state wants and the county understands and it's in compliance and it's not in compliance. Maybe by practice, it's not. I hope you're right. But by the letter of the law, they can't get out. Thank you.
Okay, members, anyone else have a comment while we're out of session? We'll recognize Mr. Colbert. He had his hand up.
I would just like to say in response to the last part of that discussion, the simple response to that would be to direct school boards to allow people to stop payroll deduction for any reason upon whatever notification they may give. We certainly allow them to drop membership upon notification. So if the school board's not acting consistent with that, the simple way to deal with that is to direct school boards about how to allow people to stop payroll deduction. But this bill doesn't talk about that. This section 4 of this bill doesn't talk about payroll deduction at all. It establishes a whole host of conditions upon membership and how membership will be established and maintained. And with all due respect to one of the earlier questions, I think if you got 50 lawyers up here who read Janus and understood it was a First Amendment case and who read Roberts versus J.C.'s and understood it's a First Amendment and 14th Amendment case, you'd have at least 49 of them siding with me.
Any further discussion of our guests? Any from our members? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank y'all. Appreciate y'all being here. Without objection, we're now back in the session. Okay. Chairman Reagan, I recognize you, and then if any members have a follow-up question with the chairman, you may raise your hand. I recognize you. Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, let me emphasize this legislation does not prohibit LEAs from implementing any employee payroll deduction for any purpose under their own policy. It simply affirms that deductions for political activities shall not be part of PECA negotiations. It does not discriminate against any professional employees organization. All professional employees organizations are treated equally and held to the same standard in this bill, regardless of their size or influence. A great deal has been made of the fact that firemen and other public officials that may belong to a different professional organization are not held to that same standard. True or not, this bill does not address that. This bill only addresses the Professional Educators Collaborative Conferencing Act, which this body passed in 2011. From that standpoint, those comparisons are extraneous. They have no bearing. And I would emphasize also, as was mentioned earlier, I too belong to a number of organizations, both professional and otherwise. The American Society for Quality, for which I am a senior member, sends me a notice every year. The Dedalians which is a professional fraternity society for heavier than air military pilots, sends me a notice for dues every year. The Chamber of Commerce, to which I belong, both in the county and the city, send me notices every year to pay my dues. Contrary to the assertion that it's onerous, it's what most of the associations that we belong to do. Some things that weren't mentioned, and I'd like to point out, is that someone can drop membership, but as I read the Constitution and bylaws of this organization, dropping membership does not excuse them from paying dues. They have to pay dues unless they drop within a specified period. And I believe, if I read this correctly, it's August to October. I think I'm reading that correctly. So from the standpoint of dropping membership, what good does that do you if you're still paying? And to the point that was raised earlier, and I think this is a really, really good point. Consistency across our state is what this bill is aimed at. Teachers, per se, are not targeted. You had two different organizations representing teachers up here testifying. So it's not just teachers. Furthermore, these professional educators are in fact employees of government. And that Janus ruling, which some of my learned friends say doesn't apply because it's a First Amendment thing, you have, in my opinion, the opportunity here to say every professional educator has the same start point. Filling out a form, as has been pointed, is not onerous, or for that matter, electronically doing it is not onerous. I have a copy here of a membership form from the TEA. We're not permitted to use props, but this membership form has on it a canceled check that's marked void, indicating that teachers can pay that way. So the idea that they can only do payroll deductions is not even in their own membership forms. I see nothing wrong with saying that you have to follow the same procedures as every other organization, association. There's a lot of avenues we could get into that this bill covers that were not mentioned. For example, requiring an organization to tell their members on an annual basis exactly on an itemized basis what their dues are and where they're divvied up. For example, if a teacher belongs to the TEA, they must, by the Constitution and bylaws, belong to the NEA, and a portion of their dues are sent to the NEA. Now, I would defy anyone to say that the NEA is not a political organization. So if you're joining the TEA, you're joining the NEA. I submit again that Janus applies fully here. And I would also again point out that this bill doesn't require a number of things I've mentioned to you already that was somehow implied that it did. I stand ready to answer questions, Mr. Chair.
I have one last person on the list, and that is Chairman Haston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Reagan, you and I have debated this a little bit outside of here, and I told you that when I grow up, I want to be like you, and I still stand by that.
Listen, please don't grow up anymore.
I think the problem I have with this bill is not necessarily, we've gotten into the weeds and the merits of it can be debated one way or the other. I mean, we've heard that 49 lawyers out of 50 would agree. We've heard that 50 different lawyers could come in here and have 50 different opinions. We've heard really compelling testimony that Janus applies. We've heard really compelling testimony that Janus doesn't apply. I'm getting ready to say something I didn't think I'd ever say. I actually think we need more time and actually more lawyers with expertise to give us some opinions on this, to be honest with you, because I don't think we're really voting on. I mean, here's the thing. If Janus doesn't apply, this bill is not needed. And there's confusion on whether it applies. And I think we need time to find out if it does, because if there's this, we don't know one way or the other, I lean towards not adding to the TCA if we're not sure if it is needed for sure. And so that's, that I've told you that, and I appreciate your efforts and your passion on this, but that's why I'll have to be a no on this. Thank you.
I thought you were going with the motion. Okay, further discussion on House Bill 1210. Chairman Reagan, your that objection to
I
the
will
question.
defer.
Okay. Deferred, the question's been called for. I will, as chairman, I'd like to ask if you're no, please say no. If you're yes, please say no, so where the chairman can make a decision. No roll call. Okay, all those in favor of moving House Bill 1210 out to county rules, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no.
No.
The noes have it, fails for lack of a majority. Thank you, Chairman Reagan. Okay, you are recognized on House Bill 1266. You are recognized.
Would I appeal the decision of the chair for a roll call vote on that last one?
According to the rules, as I understand it, once it has to be asked in the beginning, and once the gavel goes down, it is official. We'll check it with the clerk. 5-minute recess. I clearly heard more no's than.
Hey, Scott.
3 minutes on the recess.
I gotta wait. Members, we got it. Members, we got it worked out, but I got to wait 2 more minutes because I called for a 5-minute recess. 2 more minutes. 30 seconds up. Thank you, because we got a guest. Okay, members, we're back in session. The recess is over. I'm going to recognize Representative Chairman Sapicki.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your indulgence. Your ears are a lot better than mine. I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Thank you, sir. So motion stands. House Bill 1210 is referred to calendar and rules. However, my wife may disagree with you a few times. Oh, apologize. It did fail for lack of majority. Oh, Lord, keep me confused. Okay, members, here's what we're going to do. We're back in session. Let me have everyone's attention again. Before I move on to number 5, Chairman Reagan, we do have a guest on House Bill 7, House Bill 1501 by Representative Cochran, and so take up more time of our guest. House Bill 1501, Chairman Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1501 is the school turnaround pilot program. I promise you it has nothing to do with collective bargaining, and so maybe that will make it a little bit quicker. Essentially, this program, it's already mentioned that it's a pilot program, and what it is meant to address are those priority schools that are right there on the verge of the achievement school district. And so what this program would do is that it keeps locals in control of their schools. It brings in an organization to provide some very intensive training, essentially to keep them off that achievement school district list where the state comes in and takes control. And I'm not a big fan of that either. And so these are schools that have been on that priority list for some time, for a number of years. And so this is a different step, and hopefully will prove to be a better alternative than the achievement school district. With that, I believe there is an amendment we may need to put on.
Okay, members, the amendment, Chairman Cochran, is it 6814?
Actually, let me double check that, Mr. Chairman. Sorry. I believe you are correct. Yes, that is correct.
And it does rewrite. So we have a motion and a second on 6814. Any objection to adding it to the bill? Hearing none, all those in favor of adding the amendment 6814 onto the bill indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We're now back on your bill as properly amended. Representative Cochran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And maybe before we go into questions to me specifically, we do have a guest with us who flew in to just explain an example of what a service would look like what this program, there are numerous providers of this type of service. This is just one of them, but this would give us an idea of maybe what this would look like. And if there are no objections, perhaps we could go out of session to hear from Mr. Trent Kaufman.
That objection, we're out of session, and Mr. Trent Kaufman. Welcome, sir. And I understand you came in this afternoon. We want to get to before it gets too late, and just make sure your red light is on and give us your name and a position so that everybody that's listening will know. Recognize. You are.
Fantastic. My name is Dr. Trent Kaufman. I work at an organization called Education Direction. We call it Ed Direction for short. We're a team of teachers who are helping underperforming schools, supporting underperforming schools get back on track. I was able to listen to the subcommittee hearing last week and heard several questions that I felt like I could really help answer based on my experience in similar programs in other states. And prepared a one-pager that I brought. In today's world, I understood this morning that I was unable to pass out paper to the committee. So the technology folks have graciously allowed me to project it here on the large screen. I doubt that's terribly helpful. I don't know how well you can read it, but I'm here really at your service to explain how this program has worked in other states and what it looks like on the ground. Oh, fantastic. Sounds like you may have this document in your inbox, so you could actually look at it while we talk through it. I thought I'd just spend 2 minutes explaining some of the basics on this document, and then I'm open to questions and eager to help in whatever way I can, Mr. Chairman. The basic concept here is that it's a pilot program selecting 20 schools, 10 of which would participate in the program, 10 would be a control group, all of which are persistently underperforming schools, but representing different geographies, different types of schools throughout the state, including rural and urban schools from different regions of the state. And a group of school improvement service providers would be vetted by the state, after which each individual school who's identified for this program would be able to select which provider they choose to work with. The job of this provider is to do a comprehensive needs assessment, find out some of the root cause issues causing the persistent underperformance, develop a long-term school improvement plan, and then provide intensive ongoing support, including coaching in the classroom and professional development and leadership coaching, et cetera, to the staff at the school. The locals run the school, make all the decisions in terms of staffing and so forth. And the turnaround committee that's formed is all made of folks who run the local school. The outside provider is simply there to provide support and assistance. There's an interesting and unique fiscal concept here, and that the outside provider is not paid their full fees unless the school meets rigorous quantitative benchmarks over the course of their time in the program. I think there's a lot of things I could say about the program. I'd end just by saying I'm here representing, in support of this bill, I represent a specific entity who will apply to be part of the vetted provider list, but have been doing this work enough to know that the best providers out there who will come into Tennessee and who hopefully the department will vet and approve are highly reputable organizations from all walks of life. Some will be from here in Tennessee, some will be from other states. And in our case, we represent the diversity that exists here in Tennessee. We honor the fact that different school contexts, different demographic groups deserve to be served by folks who've had success in those exact types of school settings. So just in summary, we're a group of teachers who come to support underperforming schools and would be eager to help here in Tennessee as well. I'm here at your service to answer whatever questions the committee may have, Mr. Chairman.
I appreciate that. Members, y'all have a question of our guest, Representative Clemens?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, sir, for coming here. What was the name of your organization? I couldn't.
Ed Direction.
Ed Direction. Okay. And who are some of your competitors who provide these types of services?
There are many. We have sent to a couple of you who've asked some examples. I can share a few verbally as well, but I can share that in a document as well if that's helpful. Organizations like Catapult Learning, organizations like the University of Virginia Darden School of Business, who has a school turnaround specialty, TNTP, RTI International out of North Carolina, WestEd, and I wish I had a better memory than that. But there's consistently 10 or so that are highly capable, qualified organizations that apply for these sorts of programs around the country.
Representative Clemens, follow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what type of, because we've got a budget and we've got an amended budget, and I didn't see money in the budget for this program specifically. So what types of fees do y'all charge for the type of services you provide?
Yeah, it depends. It's normally dictated by the amount in the budget per school, which is a decision that's made by this body. And then what we're able to do is fit as much scope into that budget as possible. And the spirit of this is that if the school doesn't turn around, the organization doesn't make money. It loses money. And that if the school does turn around, perhaps the organization's able to not only pay its employees but make a profit as well. And the scope that we work on is how much coaching can we provide? Is it, the intent here is coaching every single week for every single teacher for a 3-year period, the core 3 years of the program, if that makes sense. And again, it depends on the final fiscal note and how much budget is allocated per school.
Follow up.
Thank you. So, I mean, if the ultimate goal is to coach every teacher every week for 1 or 2 year period, I mean, that requires quite a bit of personnel, it would seem. And
It's very intensive.
I mean, that seems like that would be quite a considerable cost associated with that if you're able to do that under your plan.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so tell me about your success rates. And
We brought the fullest example in the U.S. of this. There's several states that are in the middle of implementing a cohort of these types of schools. The first state that implemented was Utah, and it implemented in the 2014-2015 school year. So we not only have results from the program, but also did those results sustain after the program was over. On the backside of this document that hopefully you can see in front of you, and if not, I can just talk you through it. It shows during that same period, on the left 2 bars show that in the state of Utah, there was gradual improvement both in math and ELA proficiency at 2% growth during that 3-year period in the entire state of Utah, and 3.7% growth in math during that same period. There were 26 schools identified for the program. Utah allowed schools to argue themselves out of the program. One of the 26 schools convinced the State Board of Education that they had this, they didn't need outside help, and the State Board of Education allowed them not to participate. The middle 2 columns are the 25 participating schools. They saw over 30% gains in proficiency in ELA and math during that period, which of course is way more than the control group, which in this case we're using as the average growth in the state of Utah, and definitely more than the one school that opted out. The one school that opted out saw 2% growth in ELA and a negative 42% drop in math. Again, this is a school that claimed they had it and they didn't need this kind of outside support. We're seeing similar trends in other states. We just don't have the full 3 to 4 years of cohort experience to show in some of the other states that are implementing similar programs. And I should clarify, these 25 schools did not all work with Ed Direction. This is the impact of the policy. I will brag that the schools that chose to work with us had even higher rates than these. But this is what we're trying to show here is not just how great Ed Direction is, but how impactful this policy has been in another state.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, do I need to come back to you every time, or can I talk to him?
As long as you behave, yeah, go ahead.
Those are the non-behaviors right there. But thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this. So give me a little bit of demographic information for the schools that you actually operated in.
Yeah. They range, these schools often have, these schools they're often Title I schools. So from a poverty standpoint, they've got 70+% of their students who are receiving free or reduced lunch, which is one of the qualifiers for Title I. And they range. I mean, we work in more than 25 states. We have a whole team in North Carolina working in places like Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and all the way out into the rural areas of North Carolina. So we typically see one of 3 types of schools who qualify for these programs. The first are urban centers, large percentage of African-American students, high percentage of those receiving free and reduced lunch. The second is high percentage of bilingual learners. We do a lot of work in Texas, and a lot of schools on the border between Mexico and Texas have 90+% of their students who are learning a second language. That's a second type of school we see qualify for these sorts of programs. The third are extremely rural schools, sometimes on Native American reservations. And these are schools, who just, they're hard to get to, hard to access, and don't often receive these types of supports. we would recommend all three types of these schools participate in this program in the state of Tennessee. And if there's other, schools who would qualify, who have been persistently underperforming, that we try those as well. Those three schools represent probably roughly a third of our experience around the country.
And Mr. Chair, thank you. What's the average cost per student? And I'm talking about the work that Ed Direction specifically did, not the entire, other operators in the pilot program, but Ed Direction. What's the average cost per student for your work in the school?
It's a great question. Unfortunately, I've never done that. I've never looked at it that exact way, so I can't answer your question. I can be helpful though to just give you a general sense. The way we have looked at it is, on average, how much of the total school's operating budget, relative to our fees. And what we've seen is somewhere between 5% of a total school's budget is spent on a service provider like us, which is a significant. It's not that it's not a meaningful amount, but it, relatively speaking, is a reasonable amount to spend on, a service that should help turn around the school. And I think, maybe I didn't clearly answer the question earlier. Our typical fees are about $500,000 over a 3-year period. So, that's roughly $167,000 per year. And so if it's a 4-year period, it's $667,000. That's our typical fees, half of which are fees that are guaranteed if we show up and do the contract as we've described it. The other half is contingent on the school turning around. And I'd like to repeat the hope and the intention here is teachers receiving weekly coaching, depending on school size, weekly coaching. So it's a very intensive type of support.
Right. And last question. You mentioned that if the school doesn't turn around, and I'm paraphrasing, so correct me if I get it wrong. If the school doesn't turn around, then Ed Direction wouldn't make any money. How does that work?
Well, you can imagine the staffing costs to, put together a team that can coach that often in the building. So if we the basic way to think about it is that if the school doesn't turn around, it has cost us more to give the service to the school than we've been paid to provide.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I can help you out a little bit here. Remember, this is a 5-year pilot program. This bill was brought to us to see if this model may work. It's a 5-year pilot program taken in 10 schools over 5 years with a $2.5 million budget. So that's approximately $500,000 per school. And what would happen, from what I understand, Chairman Cochran, correct me if I'm wrong, there would be a $250,000 fee given provided to the company, the turnaround company, in the beginning, with another $250,000 coming at the end of the 5 years of the turnaround. Because at 5 years it ceases. If the school does not improve, then that $250,000 does not go. So a minimum of $250,000, depending on if the school was turned around or not. So when this is brought to Chairman Cochran and I sat in with him, I think you would like this. This is for Tier 2 schools that have not hit the priority status and go into the ASD. This is a model I think we could look at, and that's why it's a pilot program, to see if this model would possibly turn around these schools and keep them from going into the ASD, which I think would get a hand clap from you, fellow member. But that's what it does. It's a model to help our schools not go into priority status and ASD, and see if it works. Okay. Anyone else? Representative Love?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Representative, thank you. You did mention something that I want to ask about. You mentioned control group, and that caused me a little bit of concern there. So are you implying that there's going to be a group of schools that will receive the intervention and a group that won't receive it and believes they will? Or what? I know what a control group is, so I want to make sure that we don't have schools that are, good, I'm sorry.
I note that you're Dr. Love, so you've done your research.
Statistics, yes, sir.
The traditional and accurate way to use the term control group is especially a double blind or a gold standard kind of randomized control experiment would be what you're describing, which is a group of schools who thinks they're receiving the treatment but are not. That word is used in the bill, which is why I used the word. There are 10 schools, but obviously that will not be receiving the intervention. But obviously they will be very aware that they're not receiving that intervention. They're there so that when these 10 schools who participate in the program increase their performance, which I'm very confident they will, you can compare how they did compared to the 10 schools. And so it maybe not in a scientific way can you attribute a causal relationship between the intervention and the outcomes, but logically you can say that the intervention had a real impact, or you can talk about the degree to which the intervention had an impact on the schools who actually received the intervention.
Okay, thank you, because my concern was I didn't want to have a set of schools that were receiving the intervention, another set of students who did not, and we were just letting them be there and go along a normal course. And then we say, okay, 5 years later, this group over here that did not receive the intervention, ASD. And this group here who achieved greatness, congratulations. So I just want to make sure we're clear about control grouping in there. Thank you.
Okay, one last member, Representative Hakeem, then we'll move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, sir, for being here with us. Two questions. One, has this been previewed by our Department of Education? And I guess what kind of, the concept that you're bringing forward, has it been investigated or researched by us or anything of that nature?
Representative Hakeem, that may be best answered by the sponsor. I don't think our guest would be in a position to answer that, but we have an answer for that. But would you ask that when you get back in
Yes, sir.
session?
Okay, well, I do have one.
But go ahead. You may address while we're out.
Well, I have a second question. You might tell me the same thing. Could this be perceived as a first step to school privatization?
Would you like to respond?
I'm happy to. I've been doing this, work intensively for the last many years, and I can't imagine I haven't seen an initiative that's further from school privatization than this one. It is explicitly the control of the local group, and it's explicitly of the local school district, and it's explicitly for the purpose of helping these schools avoid losing local control. So it's never even entered the conversation in any of the places where we have been. It's about teachers who are part of an organization helping other teachers implement best evidence-based practices with fidelity and with depth. And the question of control or privatization just doesn't come up by the nature of the design.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions of our guests? I see none. Thank you so much for taking your time and being here, and sorry for the late hour for you.
It's all right. Thanks for having me.
Okay. We're back in session, members. Chairman Cochran, would you like to respond to Representative Hakeem's question as far as DOE and
Sir, thank you, Chairman White. Representative Hakeem, yes. So the Department of Education, they are officially deferred, but they have been working very closely, both with the Senate sponsor and myself on the amendment and making sure that the language is appropriate. And again, while they are deferred, they've been working very closely with us in drafting the legislation to ensure that that they can implement it efficiently if it were passed. And then I think one other just an important point to address. I know we talked about the cost of it. There is a fiscal note, $2.5 million. If it's funded, then we can go from there. But at no point is this going to be a burden financially on locals. This is going to be a state-funded initiative, and so just to address the cost question as well.
members? Anyone else have a question? Representative Parkinson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Cochran. Our target for the pilot program, where is that, and what are the schools?
You recognize?
Thank you, Representative Parkinson. That while, I mean, the specific schools have not been identified. It would be those tier 2 schools, those who've been on the priority list for a number of years and those who are at risk of being in the ASD. The process for this would start in September, about September of 2021. And let me make sure I've got that correct. Yeah, September of 2021 is when the process would begin. And that begins with creating a school turnaround plan where your local LEA, where they appoint members, there's the principal of the school, parents of students enrolled in the school, teachers there, a school board member. And so that's kind of where the process begins. They develop this turnaround plan. The local board of education, they decide which one of these providers that they want to contract with, which one they feel would best fit their needs. And then that's kind of what kicks the process off. And then it ends, roughly about 5 years after that. And I'm searching to find the exact date. But it's going to end in about 2025.
Okay.
You recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for that, Representative Cochran. It almost sounds eerily familiar, almost like the iZone model. Is there, that's the same thing that they were doing in iZone also. But if I don't have an issue with your bill, so I think I'll be supporting it. I think I will. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Members, any further, Representative Clemens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And sponsor, we discussed this a little bit in subcommittee last week. My concern here is that we're passing legislation to create a contract for private companies to come in from out of state and tell our teachers how to do their jobs. We have statutes on the book that have very strict requirements on teacher qualification in Tennessee, and we're very proud of how we train our teachers and the job that they do. And so ultimately what we'd be doing here is paying $2.5 million to have, in this case, teachers come from Utah to tell Tennessee teachers how to do their job better with an expectation that they would get results. I'm really concerned about that private insertion into our public schools and us creating contracts, of significant funds to be paid for by taxpayers to these private companies from out of state to do this. So same concerns I had last week in subcommittee. Just wanted to reiterate those. And I appreciate the aim of the legislation. I certainly take issue with ASD. So anything that's not ASD is generally positive. But this one, the way we're doing it in the private companies, I just have a real problem. So thank you.
Okay, question's been called. Any objection to the question? Hearing none, all those in favor of moving House Bill 1501 out to Finance, Ways and Means indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. It does move out. Thank you, Chairman Cochran. Members, I know it's 10-6, but this has been our last committee, and I think some of the other bills are pretty easy. We're going to keep moving forward. So I'm going to now go back to item number 5. Chairman Reagan. Motion is second on House Bill 1266. Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have an amendment, drafting code 004248, which rewrites the bill.
Okay, 4248, does it rewrite the bill?
Yes, sir.
Okay, members, any objection to adding the amendment onto the bill for discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adding 4248 to 1266 indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Your bill is amended. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And hopefully this is one of those easy, quick bills you were talking about. Very quickly, the problem is that the current law on workers' compensation and related issues when it comes to LEA personnel is unclear and challenging to implement, especially for districts that do not have workers' comp insurance. That is to say, some of our larger districts are self-insured. What this bill does, now that it's amended, is essentially 3 things. It clarifies the law by deleting the language shall be the same as if LEA's workers' compensation, and substitutes that the LEA must comply with the personal injury rules of the State Board of Education. The personal injury rules of the State Board of Education gives minimum requirements for what an LEA must provide for personal injury leave for teachers, and dictates that the LEA must create a policy to address this rule. The second thing it does is it clarifies that full benefits, as used in the law, will be those benefits that the LEA provided and the employee opted into at the time of leave. This ensures the teacher will continue to be provided the same benefits the LEA provided before the injury. The third thing is that it makes clear the benefits are the same as if an LEA had workers' compensation and can be provided for up to a year.
Chairman Reagan, the question's been called on your bill. Do you, any objection to that question?
Not at all, sir.
Okay, if no objection to that question from any member. All those in favor of House Bill 1266 going to calendar and rules indicate by saying aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, moves out. That brings us now to item number 8 by Chairman Bond. You're recognized, sir. You got a motion and a second. You want to do it from your desk?
Yes, thank you, Chairman White. This is the bill that we discussed last week that would create a grant program for growing school districts, where these growing school districts would receive some funding from the state to build new schools or for other education capital projects. The question was asked last week, could federal stimulus money be used to fund this grant program? And I have spoken with the Department of Education. The state is receiving several $1 billion from the federal government in ESSER 2 and ESSER 3.0. Much of this is going to education. About 90% of what's going to education is going to the local entities, the LEAs, and the remaining 10% is at the state level. The LEAs can spend, we believe, their federal funds on education capital projects, and the state could as well, although what is clear is the state can't tell the LEAs how to spend their 90% of the money. So I think that there would be potentially some room to fund this with federal dollars, although I should say that the rules are still being developed and passed down to us from the federal government. So we're still learning what we can and can't do with the money. I want to add one more thing. The federal government is also discussing an infrastructure plan. It seems like that infrastructure plan, if or when it's passed, would provide money for the state that could also be used for something like schools. We don't know that for sure, but it seems like that's a possibility. And so with that answer to the question, I stand ready to answer your questions, and I ask you to consider providing this pool of grant money allocated through this bill to help our LEAs build schools.
Okay, members, with that explanation by Representative Baum, questions on our discussion on the bill? Chairman Sakicki?
Real quick, is this just for 1 year or ongoing?
This is one-time money. It's just one time, 1 year.
Representative Lafferty, Chairman Lafferty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you've got competing districts that are all hands out for these dollars, how will a situation like that be determined?
It's the Department of Education and the commissioner that will set up the application process, the process by which the grant money is allocated. In the bill, guidelines are suggested. The guidelines that the Department of Education might consider might be the growth rate, the ADM growth rate in for the LEA, the number of school buildings that the LEA has plans to construct or initiate construction on. And also required in order to be eligible for the grant funding is that the LEA must have a capital improvement plan in place in writing. That will outline exactly what the structures are that are in the pipeline to be built. These are 3 factors that could be considered, although the Department of Education may have other factors that they wish to add to the list.
Thank you, sponsor. Thank you, Chair.
Chairman Hurt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't really have a question. I'll just express a huge concern I have with the legislation, being from a smaller rural district who doesn't benefit from the growth that some places do and doesn't have the tax base. The legislation offers to put significant amount of funds toward other districts and kind of narrow down to, which would take away the opportunity for the more rural districts that don't benefit as much from that. I also have a huge concern with all the money that we have coming, funneling that toward just however it gets funded is just a huge concern for me. And you know, in discussions, it's been a concern that I've heard. honestly, I think we might be a little better off to look at this maybe next year, in my opinion, because see where this money comes, see what we can do with it, see what direction we want to go and how and what we actually can do and where that money is needed most. And if we get money, we're getting a significant amount. If LEAs, which we can't tell them what to do with some of it, but that 10% we can direct. I would just like us to think about that, about putting it off and seeing what direction we can go with these funds to make sure they are spent evenly across the state to the districts that need it evenly. And with that, let me go ahead. I'll make a motion to roll this to first calendar for February of 2022.
Okay, we have a motion, and it has been seconded before us, about rolling this to the first calendar of February 2022. That cuts off discussion except for that of the sponsor, Representative Bond.
Thank you, Chairman Hurt. In order to qualify for the grant funding, all a LEA has to do is to have grown by 2% over a 5-year period. That's not 2% per year. That's just 2% over a 5-year period. So rural districts, suburban districts, urban districts, they all may be eligible if they've grown by 2%. Chairman Hurt, your district may in fact be eligible. In fact, I asked the Department of Education to examine how many LEAs would potentially benefit from this program, and it's evidently 39.
Okay, members, we have the motion before us. All those in favor of moving House Bill 1174 to next year indicate by saying aye. Those opposed? The ayes do have it. Bill fails, or the motion carries. Okay, members, we're getting close to the end. House Bill 1294 by Representative Johnson. Item 10, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to request a roll call vote on this bill and any motion related to it.
Okay, do you have an amendment? The amendment I have is 5879 that rewrites the bill. Is that correct?
7-8.
5878? Yes, ma'am. Okay, members, that does rewrite the bill. And so without objection, all those in favor of adding 5878 to House Bill 1294 indicate by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We now on a properly amended bill, House Bill 1294. Would you like to describe to us what the bill does?
Yes, this bill removes the penalty for teachers who originally taught in Tennessee, moved away to teach in another state, and wanted to return. While teachers in other states have reciprocity with Tennessee if they weren't in Tennessee first, folks from Tennessee are penalized if they come home if they stayed long enough for the licensure from Tennessee to expire. And so what this would do would remove that penalty for people coming home to Tennessee. We're facing a teacher shortage currently, and teachers from Nashville, Knoxville, and Upper East have reached out to tell me that this would put them back in the classroom in the fall. I hope we can put our kids first and fix this glitch in our code and get great teachers back in the classroom in Tennessee.
Thank you for that description. Chairman Reagan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is essentially the same as the amendment that went on my bill, the correction of a lot of other things. Therefore, I move this to summer study.
Okay, you got a motion and a second for summer study. That cuts all debate off except for that of the sponsor. Representative Johnson, you recognize.
Thank you. I appreciate that this body likes my bill so much that they added it on an amendment to another bill. But I would also like to, just in case something happens, this is a bill that's already passed on the Senate floor. I'd like to have a vote on this bill, please.
Well, we have a motion before us moving it to summer study. So we'll have to vote on that first. Any objection? All those in favor? Okay, we'll have a roll call. Madam Clerk, call the roll. If you let me make clear, the motion before us by Chairman Reagan is to move it to summer study. So if you vote yes, you'll be voting to move summer study. If you vote no, you say no. Madam Clerk?
Representative Baum?
Yes.
Carringer? Yes. Cassada?
Yes.
Sapicki?
Yes.
Clemmons? Cochran?
Yes.
Darby?
Yes.
Gillespie?
Yes.
Hakeem?
No.
Haston?
Yes.
Lafferty? Love?
No.
Parkinson?
No.
Reagan?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Hurt?
Yes.
Chairman White?
Yes.
12 ayes, 4 noes.
Motion carries. Move to summer study. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman and members.
Members, I think you'll like the next three and they go pretty quick. So I'm going to turn the gavel over to Chairman Hurt. And I'm going to get in the well so you can see. That way you can see me.
Moving right along. Members, next on the bill, we have House Bill 1591 by Chairman White. I have a motion and a second. Motion and a second. Chairman White, you are recognized.
Okay, I don't believe there's an amendment on this bill. Okay, thank you very much. Members, let me make sure. And I appreciate this. I want to come to the well. I'm going to follow Chairman Reagan's lead and come to the well so you can see my face. This is one I'm carrying for the Senate. When we passed the bill back during special session that allowed for there to be a waiver, requesting a waiver, this allows the parents to ask for that waiver. What I really like about this bill is part of Section 2. It says immediately upon determining that a student in kindergarten through grade 3 has a significant reading deficiency based on the results of the Universal Reading Screener, most recently administered to the student, the LEA or the public charter school must notify the student's parent in writing that the student has been identified to have a significant reading deficiency and provide the student parents with this information. Now, we don't need to wait till third grade to tell the parents that the child's going to be retained. So Section 2, all along, the parents are notified. Now, third grade, if the school determines that the child is in priority status or approaching and they are retained, then the parent is allowed to ask for the waiver. And so that's the gist of what this bill does, give the parent the right. We always kind of default to the parents on that. So that is the gist of what this bill does.
I got a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And members I have on the list, Representative Cassada.
Mr. Chairman, is it true that's an unwritten House rule that if a committee in education meets past 6, there's pizza by the chairman? Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
Chairman, you're recognized.
If y'all hang around about 10, I have it here.
Thank you, sir. Next on the list, I have Representative Clemmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not as important as pizza, but my question is, and concern is the same as I expressed in the subcommittee, is that we're limiting this to the parent or guardian. And there's some instances where the parent or guardian might not understand the appeals process or might not be on the ball, so to speak. And I would hate for a teacher not to be able to act as the backstop and appeal on behalf of a child who they've spent time with. I understand that, I understand why we want the parent or guardian to do it, and I think it's great, but I'm concerned that someone else isn't able to do it in this instance. Can you speak to that?
From what I understand, and this bill is brought to me, when we passed this in a special session, let me just kind of read this. It says, currently the State Board of Education is charged with developing rules to establish an appeal process. I said waiver, I meant to say appeal process to be administered by the Department of Education for a student who is identified for retention in the third grade based on the student's achieving performance level rating of approaching. So basically at that point, if the child, and I think that if there's been communication since kindergarten and the teachers are involved, the principal's involved, but at the end of the day, parents may know something that they need to be able to jump in at that point in time and ask for an appeal also. Puts the parent in the equation. When we came out of special session, it basically just said there will be an appeal process, but it wasn't clear.
Representative Clemens?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it, and I support the legislation, and that appeals process is still a little fuzzy to me, and I'm not sure it's been completely straightened out. But just saying that only a parent or guardian can appeal on behalf of a child is my main concern, only concern here, and that someone else can't step up and do it for that child in the case that a parent or guardian's not on the ball or is, otherwise unable for some reason. So thank you. I appreciate you addressing that.
Thank you.
Members, next I have Chairman Sapiki. Any objections? Seeing none, we'll be voting on House Bill 1591. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Bill moves on to calendar and rules. Next up, we have House Bill 752 by Chairman White. Have a motion. Have a motion, properly motioned and seconded. Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, members. This particular bill deals with dual enrollment. Yes, sir.
I believe we have an amendment, Chairman White.
Yes. That is correct. 6654.
6654. We have a motion and a second. If it's okay, we'll go ahead and vote on the amendment and get it moving forward. All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Amendment goes on the bill. You are recognized on the bill as amended.
Thank you,
Chairman White.
Thank you, Chairman. And members, the amendment was added. This fixed a typographical error. If you want to know what it is, we can certainly have legal tell us what that is. But it's a typo error. But if you don't need that, this is about dual enrollment. We, as you know, we have a lottery calendar every year, and in Chairman Lafferty's committee, we had a lottery calendar, and we had several bills come out. This one deals with dual enrollment. This will completely pay for 4 dual enrollment courses for our high school students. Now, why is this great? Is because you take a dual enrollment, which is a college course, and if you've done 4 of these, you have approximately, 12 credit hours when you go to a VOTEC school or higher education, which puts you along the way. And so this completely pays for that. It's average about $750 per course. And so this would totally pay for 4 of those. Right now, we're paying for about two plus $200. And also, we did the GIVE Act a couple years ago, which did it for certain courses. But this will complete that. And so with that, I renew the motion.
Thank you, Chairman White. Members, any questions on the bill? Question been called. No objections. We'll be voting on House Bill 752. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Bill moves on to finance. And looks like we may be 753. We're next on the list, members, is House Bill 753 by Chairman White. Have a motion and a second. Properly motioned and seconded. Chairman, you are recognized.
Thank you. This is House Bill 753, and we do have an amendment 6233 that rewrites the bill.
Have a motion second on the amendment, but we'll go ahead and vote and get the amendment put on the bill. Seeing no objections. All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Chairman White, you are recognized on the bill as amended.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, basically, I think you'll like this. This will help our school systems out. As you know, the federal government requires through the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Act, that they also have a free public education. But this costs our schools across the state about $60 million. Under federal law, the Individuals with Disabilities Act, or IDEA, are required to provide certain health-related and medical assistance services within the school facilities. And failure to provide these services to 10 care eligible students has punitive consequences. The LEAs are currently providing those services through licensed professionals, which are either employees of the LEA or independent contractors. However, the LEAs are absorbing 100% of the cost. This is costing the LEAs approximately $60 million, as I said. Because the IDA requires the LEAs to provide these services, the law also provides a mechanism for the LEA to seek reimbursement. However, under the current Tennessee law, the claiming process to apply for federal funds requires physician authorization in order for the claims to be processed and the LEAs receive to receive the reimbursement. The LEAs are able to receive the physician authorization in less than 30% of the time of eligible claims. This means that 70% of the eligible claims remain unprocessed, costing our LEAs millions of dollars. What this amendment simply does is remove the physician authorization requirement on certain services. And those services I've got right here are 4. They are a physician, a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, a speech language pathologist, and an audiologist, where the authorization is removed. And by removing this requirement only for these 4 licensed professionals that provide services within the school-based setting, will remove a major obstacle for the LEAs to allow them to successfully seek reimbursement. Basically, we're not getting money back from the federal government for our LEAs, and so this will bring more dollars down from the federal government for our schools.
Thank you, Chairman White. And with that, we'll take questions. First one, let's have Chairman Lafferty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick one. Will this sounds like the LEAs, if we take over these costs for them, will they then be able to keep the difference back home in the school district?
No, what I understand, whenever they had to incur these expenses, students with disabilities, they require certain attention. So there's a thing I say. So this allows us through TennCare to draw down these dollars through TennCare for the schools can get reimbursed. Does that make sense?
I think so, yes. Thank you. Good bill. Thank you.
Members, any other questions? Questions been called. Seeing no objections, we'll be voting on House Bill 753 as amended. All opposed, say aye. What'd I say? Oh, I'm sorry, jumping ahead of myself. Ready to get finished. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Bill moves on to finance. And with that, we have House Bill 917. Motion and a second. Chairman, you're recognized.
I'm taking that off notice.
Seeing no objection, that will be taken off notice. And members, before we break, I will give Chairman White the gavel back to any final words.
Okay, members, thank you for hanging with us and for getting through our parliamentary procedures this time. Is there any further comments, discussion? If Chairman, thank you very much. Appreciate that. The Education Administration Committee is closed, subject to the call of the chair.